So originally, I was going to write a review about Superman Smashes the Klan by Luen Yang, with art from Guru Hiru, and that book alone. But I'm not. The book is amazing. It's actually broken into my top 5 favorite comic book storylines of all time. That may sound arbitrary. I mean like stories that are self-contained, like story arcs, graphic novels, and events. Essentially, I'm saying I hold this book to the same high level of regard as I do stories like Infinite Crisis, House of X, and Kingdom Come. I've said it before. I've said it 1,000 million times. I'm not a Superman guy. Or at least I wasn't. Sure, I'm not gonna suddenly go back on the profound belief I have that Batman is superior, more entertaining, and would win a fight. I'm saying that I think I'm done trashing Superman for a while. For too long I judged him by stories I found boring. Stories I still do, and a characterization that I couldn't get behind during what was essentially an angsty part of my life. Suddenly, I feel like there's room for hope, is what I'm saying. And I found the ability to truly give Superman an honest shot again. This book, Superman Smashes the Klan, it got me thinking about Superman in general, and I came to realize something. The themes here, they're not only in this Superman story, they're a part of Superman. Always and forever. But it's always subtle, rarely stated. The Ku Klux Klan is one of the most famous racist terrorist groups in American history, maybe even world history, and they are the definition of a group made to get knocked out by Superman with the way they've hanged, burned, and tarred and feathered people throughout their history. And Superman, the first hero, the oldest superhero, the quintessential superhero, is something racist organizations like the KKK hate. He's an immigrant, and an illegal one at that. Kal-El came from an alien planet, not by choice, but by that of his parents. He grew up with a name different from what he was born with to blend in, trading Kal-El for Clark Kent, and he knew 2 languages. One he couldn't speak to hide his true heritage and fit in. I bet a lot of people can relate to that description. But save for a few instances like Superman Smashes the Klan, it's been a while since he was originally written by Jerry Siegel to come off that way. If you didn't know any better, you'd never know that Superman was written by the son of Jewish immigrants, and made to come off that way. Personally and honestly, I think Superman should go back to being steeped in his heritage. I'm saying that the Lees, the side characters in Superman Smashes the Klan, should become side characters as prominent as Lois Lane or Jimmy Olsen. And no, I don't mean he needs to fight off Zod every week or go try and figure out how to bring back Krypton, but I mean now and then, not just once in a generation, a writer should take a look at Superman from the same point of view as his creator once did. Superman's a defender of the downtrodden and oppressed, but he's also someone who, once he takes off his cape, is one of the oppressed. That was Superman in this book. And for anyone adverse to change, guess what? Superman was able to stand by the downtrodden with and without his cape without suddenly not being Superman. Other characters like Black Lightning, Midnighter, Black Panther, and Batwoman, they're not always about the aspect of their character that makes them oppressed or targeted, but they never go too long without a story about it, and their stories they never pretend they aren't what they are and ignore it for extended periods of time. Introducing the Lees into DC canon and into Superman's main roster is the perfect way for Superman to do the same. Superhero stories aren't solely about the superheroes. Maybe in team books they are, but in solos there's always a cast of characters who are and aren't superheroes. Superman is no exception, and this book makes the most of his characters to facilitate a story that remembers and flaunts Superman's roots and his mission for a better world. If Superman just came out of nowhere and started hunting down the Ku Klux Klan, that would be pandering at best and just blatantly boring at worst, though I probably would still read it. Superman's story should incorporate what Luen Yang does so well with this book. He has side characters who bring more than plot points about being all-powerful or a journalist. Not that those stories aren't good, but not only have we been getting them for over 80 years, they don't have or leave a lot of room open for diversity, like the lessons they're teaching or warning us about. How many times can an alien supervillain kidnap Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane? How often are they just bystanders to a fight between Superman and some big alien during their brawl? It's cool when it's a mission against corrupt politicians and companies like Lex Luthor and Cadmus, but again, that's all we've been getting. That's the most, that's the best. It was powerful in Superman Smashes the Klan, when Perry White heard that Chinese immigrants who had moved to town had been terrorized and threatened by the Klan. His words, "Is this really my city?" is so powerful compared to hearing about some new person who helped destroy Krypton. Or another time that Superman struggles with how he should use his powers because of how powerful they are. Perry's simple but telling reaction to a Klan attack comes from not knowing what really goes on, that sometimes people really just don't know. It's a question those oblivious need to ask to protect themselves and their neighbors, because that question can help you figure out how to help. And Perry White answers the call by doing something about it, by using the paper to find the Ku Klux Klan's leader. That's powerful. It's a lesson that everyone should hear, and having it in a comic book is just another way for more people to reach it. But it means so much coming from a Superman book. And this story has so many moments like that, once you framed it around different side characters. Perry White may have had the reaction, but if it weren't for the new side characters Yang writes about, the Lees, a Chinese family who just moved to town, that conversation between Perry White and the reporter never would have happened. If the Lees, particularly Roberta and Tommy Lee, the children, weren't side characters in Superman's story, so many lessons and moments would go untold. This book properly challenges Superman to explore why it took so long for him to learn how to fly and use the rest of his powers, other than, I didn't know I could do that. I'm so afraid I could hurt somebody. Instead, the idea that he's trying to pass as a human, that he's trying to look like he's doing things that a human can do, but just better, it immediately makes him more relatable to anyone who's hid who they are so they don't look like a freak. And Roberta Lee, someone who's had to change her name and pretend to be something other than Chinese, figures it out because she sees her brother do the same thing to fit in. Superman jumps like a man but only higher, and runs like a man but only faster, so that he never does anything and nothing never happens to him that doesn't happen to seem kind of normal. Tommy plays up stereotypes and calls himself and his family wontons right in front of his sister so he can fit in with kids, the same way Superman wants to fit in with human society. These side characters truly capture how people of color, especially kids, will change their personality and make fun of their own heritage and race to make white people laugh, hurting themselves and their families in the process. That's not even mentioning how it teaches the white kids how it's okay to make fun of other races, and that's not to say those kids are jerks. If a black kid tells a white kid a racist joke, he has every reason to think that's okay to say to another. And you just had one black kid teach a white kid how to hurt another black kid's feelings. And that's all in a Superman book. Superman Smashes the Klan actually spends just as much time on this kind of growth for Superman, as the book does the Lees. Superman throughout the whole book is fighting these abilities that make him Kryptonian. He denies them in his full potential because he's so afraid of not fitting in. And in that moment, Superman becomes as relatable as Spider-Man, maybe even more so. It adds a layer and depth to his character by having these side characters. Superman and the Lees together learn to struggle and overcome, finding a balance between assimilating to a new place and culture without giving up a piece of themselves to achieve it. Having the Lees there as well, on a base level, adds diversity to Superman's cast of characters. That's going to sound eye-rolling, I admit, but it immediately changed the dynamic and the challenges Superman's side characters face when they were trying to help him and live up to the standard he sets. For instance, when Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane go up to a cop about a missing person, that cop isn't going to bat an eye. When Roberta Lee goes up to a cop, it's far from unrealistic for him to blow her off in a modern comic as it does in this novel's period piece. After telling him her brother is missing, the way the cop explains the decision to not help her is to gaslight her, saying this city is very, very safe, especially for people like you. Metropolis goes out of its way for you, giving you houses and jobs and promotions you don't even have to earn, all because it wants to be the blasted League of Nations or something. I've experienced conversations and dickheads like this in my life, who would refuse to think I deserve help because of some imaginary aid from the government or society or whatever. This book just made it a cop and the victim a young girl, and this universal experience I wish that most colored people probably didn't know, but we do. This whole interaction is just a page, and it had the depth of a sea behind it. That's ultimately a small but striking thing to add to the story, that having the Lees or the characters like them can add to Superman. But then again, that must seem like I'm just talking about what those characters bring to the book when they're not with Superman. I've said before that Roberta is the one who realizes that he's holding back, hiding a part of himself. That's more than the page that was the interaction between Roberta and the cop. Roberta is Superman rethinking himself, his childhood, and who he can be in a whole new light, because other characters either won't bring things like that up to him, or can't because it would never occur to them. How could Jimmy ever inspire Superman to think about what it was like to be called the devil for his powers, without Jimmy saying something cruelly or just strangely out of character? This avoids some of the weirdly focused writing that has side characters saying things that seem unnatural, or coming off from them. Just kind of move along the plot. It makes more sense for Superman to be asking the question, why some of the powers, but not others? It's as if you only want to be half of who you actually are. That makes sense after a heartfelt conversation with Roberta. Roberta goes on for days languishing over feelings of how she doesn't feel like she belongs, and how it isn't okay to be her. So of course, she would tell Superman that she's sorry, that it isn't okay for him to fly. Superman only has a flashback of the time kids mistook his alien parents for that of demons, because Roberta reminds him of why he holds back. Other characters in his life don't do that. Other characters don't remind Superman of the times he felt alone and out of place in the world, and I think he could use characters who do in his permanent cast. Right now, Superman is constantly being reminded of how normal he is, with a wife, a kid, and neighbors who all know who he is, where he works, and what he does during the day. Superman has recently become the most open book imaginable, and I think that's taken a bit of depth from him. I think the thing that hurts Superman the most is that nowadays all he does is seem to fight aliens and mega monsters, at least in his most, popular stories, I guess. But some of them are symbolic and well written. Some of them are used for drama, and some are just lamos who apparently want to claim responsibility for destroying Krypton. Again, his conflicts are just getting samey. When you think of the best Superman stories, his conflicts aren't purely physical. You think of All-Star Superman, with him coming to terms with how he can help as many people as possible before he dies, and how he can make life better for people. In the story, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, his fight was proving that pure violence and getting down to the same level as the criminals doesn't help anyone. They all mean more than Superman punching Brainiac in the face. Stories like that are fun, when they're not all that's happening. Sometimes Superman needs to get real, and introduce some more different characters who bring out different villains and conflicts to help with that. Superman used to spend his time fighting the KKK and Nazis. He used to fight real villains and teach us how to protect ourselves and each other. People use bookmarks of Superman talking to kids, telling them how they need to stick up for their friends whenever someone's attacking their friends because of what they are, not who they are. Adding Roberta Lee, at the very least, with all the elements that Jean Luen Yang has attached to her, will give Superman a reason to inspire and teach in a way we can actually replicate. For lack of a better word, I want DC to add something to Superman that makes it pretty common for him to be smashing racism again.